Hey guys, so I want to go over potentially one of the new best ascendancies in the game, that is the Amazon for the new Hunters class. So in 0.1, if this ascendancy was brought on right now, it definitely would be one of the best ascendancies. Now in 0.2, the thing is, there's going to be a lot of balance changes, the patch notes aren't out yet. In 0.2, who knows what they're changing, they could be changing accuracy formula, they could be changing charges, but yeah, I'll go over everything about this ascendancy and why it might be extremely good. So first notes first, we'll start from the top, we'll go for infusion. So infusion is definitely one of the nodes that looks potentially extremely insane if this was in the game right now. Now I say that because in 0.2, we don't know what they're changing. They could be changing charge generation. But currently in the game, it's extremely easy to have like 100% charge up time, which makes this node absolutely insane. You might be wondering, okay, so you consume, a charge and you trigger an infused weapon to gain 2 of that charge element. So what is this charge? What does it do? So as you can see right here, infused weapon, there's cold infused, fire infused, and lightning infused. It gives 612% attack damage and then converts 100% of your fist damage to that element. And I believe if you do have all 3 charges, this would triple in damage. So it would be like 1800% increased attack damage, which is an absurd number. But anyway, 600% attack damage alone with this 1 charge infusion, doubling or more than doubling your damage on practically almost every single projectile skill in the game. So you can see how this ascendancy node is quite insane off the bat. If you can generate the charges and if you can keep spending them, you're doubling your damage off of one ascendancy node and potentially tripling your damage if you can get multiple charges going. Now, of course, this is true in the current patch, but once again in 0.2, they might drastically be changing, how hard it is to generate charges. So we don't really know, but something to keep in mind is, yeah, this is potentially really insane. We'll have to wait for patch notes. Also, something to note is that one of the easy enablers for this can be Hate Forge. If you get a negative 10 maximum rage Hate Forge, your maximum rage will then be 20, and then you get 3 random charges on top of that. So every 20 rage, you generate 3 charges. You would only need like 4 rage or 5 rage on hit to essentially have 100% uptime on charge infusion. So it's really, really easy, like I said, in the current patch to have this 100% uptime charges. And Hate Forge being a glove is not a big deal since like, and with some actions, most likely be inert. But yeah, there's a lot of insane ways that you can generate infinite charges right now. So if there is no charge changes in 0.2, then this node is potentially going to be really insane. So that's the first one. The node behind it just gives you 50% chance for a fusion to not be consumed when infusing projectile. Also really good because if they do nerf charges, this should help at keeping charge infusion up for maximum uptime. But as of right now, you will not need this node. Next node we'll talk about is the recovery node. So Mr. Carver's, this thing is pretty mediocre unless Leech is being reworked in 0.2. As of right now, Leech is still extremely mid. I would not take this node. If you did want recovery, I would take Ascendancy Brew. Ascendancy Brew makes life flasks also recover mana, and mana flasks also recover life. Now, I don't think these sustain nodes are good in the current patch. Bosses die way too fast, and for mapping, you have life on kill and mana on kill from jewels. So this is not really useful in the current patch. But if we are nerfed quite heavily in 0.2, then maybe you could pick this up for bosses if boss fights do actually last for a minute or 2. If boss fights last for like 10 or 12 seconds, then this is not worth picking. But it is strong if bosses do last a long time. Now, for the big defensive node I want to talk about is Stalking Panther. So Stalking Panther is pretty insane for a few different reasons. I'll go over why. But yeah, evasion rating from equipped helmet, gloves, and boots is doubled. Evasion rating from equipped body armor is halved. So this is quite a big downside, until you realize there is an item called Queen of Force in the game. And Queen of Force, as you can see here, has really low base evasion. This doesn't count the increased evasion. So it has 600 base evasion, and of course has the extremely strong line right here, 1% increased movement speed per 500 evasion. This goes down to I believe 385 when you corrupt it. So also in a Queen of Force build, if you lose half your evasion rating from your chest, it doesn't really matter because it already has like no evasion, and then doubling your helmet, boot, and gloves is absolutely insane. Like I said, in the current patch, if this ascendancy was in the game, Queen of Force plus this ascendancy, you could get over 300% movement speed. That is how good this node is. Once again, could be changed in the patch, but yeah, it potentially could be really insane. Another application for this is using a pure ES body armor, because then the downside, there is no downside, right? So you get a pure ES body armor, 800, 900 ES, then you still get enough evasion through your helmet, boot, and gloves. So you have like 40k evasion and like, 2 to 3k ES based off your scale on your skill tree. So that's another potential avenue you can also take with this node. And besides Stalking Panther, the Ascendancy has no defensive nodes, although this is a defensive node in itself, but it's something to mention as well. Next, we'll talk about Predatory Instinct. So reveal weakness against rare and unique enemies, 50% more damage against enemies with an open weakness. Now, I do have the screenshot here showing what the weakness is. So these light red lines is the weakness spots. And if you kind of like piece it together, it's roughly like 35% to 40% of enemies' HP seems to be a weakness, which if you math it out, it's just around 20% or a little bit less than 20% more damage on average. So at a base value, 20% more damage for an Ascendancy node that pretty much does not have a conditional, you're always gonna have this on every single rare and unique monster, is pretty good. 20% more damage is pretty much where other Ascendancies are at, but the bonus here is that it works better with damage and ailments, because if you do 50% more damage with a big bleed or big ignite, that still carries over even when they aren't open weakness. So yeah, overall, really nice node just for 2 Ascendancy points. If you just pick this node up and do nothing with it, it's just on average 20% more damage, which is a pretty good Ascendancy node, as there's really no conditionals here. Now the node behind it is probably one of the worst Ascendancy nodes in the entire game for damage and for the kill. So we just talked about the uptime of the Ascendancy, it's like 35 to 40%. Well, this gives you 40% skill speed and 20% movement speed while in the presence of an enemy with open weakness. As we just discussed, the open weakness uptime is only 35 to 40%, meaning on average, this is only 14 to 16% increased skill speed and only like 8% or 7% movement speed, which is not that good. The movement speed's not good because it won't help you from pack to pack because it had to be in your presence. So you have to be 6 meters within the rare monster. So yeah, it's not going to give you movement speed for like pack to pack or backtrack or anything. So this movement speed is like kind of mute. It's kind of like only kind of useful on bosses, but even then you don't really need that much movement speed on bosses. So this might as well not exist. And 14 to 16% increased skill speed on average is extremely weak for a Ascendancy node. This is like 5% to 7% more damage depending on your attack speed. So yeah, this is probably one of the worst Ascendancy nodes in the entire game, which is fine because the other nodes are insane. But yeah, I do hope this is buffed before launch because this is just like a dead Ascendancy node. There's no case scenario where you're going to use this. Maybe if they changed it to if you open a weakness recently, you get this buff, that would make it a lot more playable, especially for mapping. You have a lot higher uptime, but yeah, currently this node is really, really weak. Now the last 2 nodes, potentially the strongest node here, Critical Strike. Chance to hit with attacks can exceed 100%, gain additional critical hit chance equal to 25% of excess chance to hit with attacks. Now there's been some discussion and we don't really know how exactly this works. Is this base crit or is this just a bonus crit that does not scale with increased critical strike chance? So I can make an argument for both. So it can be base crit, because if this wasn't base crit, and let's just say this was bonus critical strike chance, then this would be one of the weakest nodes in the game, considering you have to invest into this to actually make it work. At top end, it would only be around like 15% more damage, and that's having to invest into thousands and thousands of accuracy. So yeah, it would be really, really weak if it was just bonus crit. On the flip side, if this was base crit, it would be like the best Ascendancy node in the game, because it would give you 10% base crit, which then scales with increased crit. And I have some numbers here, but essentially on a normal Deadeye build, if this did give base crit, it would give around 45% more damage, which is definitely one of the highest damage Ascendancy nodes in the game, and it can give more as well. For example, let's say your bow didn't have crit, and then you take this node, it gives you around 100% more damage. Depending on how this node works, it is extremely strong or extremely weak. I hope they do clarify on it before the patch comes out, or they're potentially working on how hit chance scales so it's not as insane at the high end. I do have this spreadsheet here. I don't know whose this is. It was linked in the chat and they didn't mention who it was. But anyway, this is accuracy hit chance with evasion accuracy. Essentially, just look at this last line right here. And when you reach like 6,000 accuracy, you get a 132% hit chance. And then around 12,000 accuracy is 140% hit chance. But a lot of people are saying accuracy stacker, but personally, I don't see a reason to go accuracy stacker on this because it has heavy diminishing returns. You can see from 12,000 accuracy to 50,000 accuracy, it's only 7% more hit chance. So it's really not that worth it to stack accuracy if you want to abuse this node. You can just go for like 7k, 8k, 9k, get like 8 to 10% crit, and then you're fine. You don't really need to push for 50k to have that 12% base crit. It's just not really worth it. 50k accuracy would be an insane amount of investment, especially because accuracy payoffs isn't that great. The only accuracy payoff we really have is Falcon Dive, which is good, but it's not good alone to make a build around. The other accuracy or pseudo accuracy payoff was Hand Wisdom Action, because you stack a ton of dex, get a ton of attack speed, and that dex convert to accuracy. Although, like I said, Hand Wisdom Action is more than likely nerfed in the next patch. But if it's like not nerfed, or the attack speed's not nerfed portion of it, that could be an avenue of scaling where you stack dex, get a ton of accuracy, and then take Falcon Dive, and also get a ton of base crit. But yeah, personally, as of right now, if I was to use this, you would not need to stack accuracy. You can get like 6k to like 9k accuracy, get like 7 to 8% or 9% base crit, and yeah, just be an extremely strong Ascendancy node. But like I said, if it's just bonus crit and doesn't scale the increased critical strike chance, then this node is overall relatively weak and I wouldn't really take it. And if you are wondering how easy is it to reach these numbers, I made a quick POB here, but essentially you can get 9,000 with accuracy on a bow person really easily. I didn't do like any spear pops, so I'm not really sure if you can get accuracy on shield or not. But yeah, at least on a bow character, it's really easy to hit 9k. The only investment I have is these 3 points here, then accuracy on quiver, and then accuracy on my bow. Now, accuracy on bow is optional, but it would be good with the next Ascendancy node. If you don't have accuracy on bow, it's roughly around 7.5k accuracy, which is still quite good. So the next and final node is Penetrate. Attacks using your weapon have added fizz damage equal to 25% of the accuracy rating on the weapon. So this is with a top end accuracy rate on a bow is around 160 flat fizz damage, which is quite good, but it's not really better than like a perfect miniature bow, but this would make it easier to get accuracy for the crit. So that's why you would take it, because that suits you with the crit. And it's also way easier to buy weapons with accuracy. They are a lot cheaper, and even the next patch, even with this node, it'll still be a lot cheaper because the only people who buy those bows would be, people who are playing Amazon. So yeah, this is just a nice flex node. You may or may not take this, just depends. Like, if you buy a really good weapon that has accuracy, then you might as well take this. This node will only ever be worth it though if this is base crit, because if this is not base crit, then stacking accuracy, like I just said, would not be worth it. Anyway, that's all Ascendancy. Currently, it's looking very, very strong. I would like clarification on this critical strike node because it's either like one of the best nodes in the game or one of the worst nodes in the game. But yeah, besides that, this is definitely one of the Ascendancies that I might be playing on launch. Just depends on what we're going to patch notes in a few days. I will go over the patch notes as well. But yeah, anyway, that's mostly about it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. But yeah, this is Ascendancy. You can play as like bow, crossbows, or spear. Like I said, even though it is Amazon, you don't have to play as spears. You can play as Ascendancy as bows. Anyway, that's about it.